Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Herbal Mana Podcast. I'm Todd Bailey, one of the founders of Herbal Mana. I actually founded it with my son, who's the real genius behind the marketing and some of the formulations. For the podcast today, we get a real treat. We get Marya Badiei, and she has an awesome background. Some of you men that are watching, you're going to have to hang in here a little bit because we're going to get into energy and kind of the woo-woo stuff. And I can tell you it's absolutely worth it. I used to be not skeptical. I just didn't really understand. But fortunately, I've got a very patient wife who's helped me to get a better understanding of energy and grounding and all sorts of things that Marya can talk about, which are going to be really awesome. So, Marya, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having. I'm really happy to be here.
It should be a lot of fun. All right. So your practice, you're in San Diego?
Yes, I'm in San Diego now. I practice integrative Chinese medicine and intuitive coaching and healing.
All right. We're going to have to pull all that apart. Chinese medicine. What the heck is Chinese medicine? Because most folks don't know. If you haven't had acupuncture or certain kinds of practitioners, then we don't see it because we're typically in the US, we're seeing Western medicine, allopathic medicine. What's the difference and why should we be looking for Chinese medicine practitioners?
Chinese medicine is also allopathic medicine, which is different than homeopathic medicine. However, in Chinese medicine, we look at the body as a whole, and we're always looking at how we can bring the body back into harmony and balance so that the body can heal itself. So in the principles of Chinese medicine, we break it down to qi, which is the vitality of the body, blood flow, the quality of the blood, the nourishment of the blood, yin, more the structure of the body, and yang, the vitality, the energy of the body. So we're always looking at where there is deficiency, where there is excess, and how we can bring everything back into harmony through the organs, through the meridians, so that everything's flowing better. And so there's better blood flow, better flow of vitality within every aspect of the body. And when everything's in harmony and the nervous system is open in Chinese medicine, the body will always heal itself. You'll have homeostasis.
How did you get on this path? Why this path?
I was always interested in healing, and I was always interested in earth medicine and grounding and all the opportunities that the earth itself brings to us for us to be our healthiest version. And I found that Chinese medicine was the perfect combination of both, where it's all about healing and it's all about the medicine that comes naturally from the earth and our relationship and our connection to the earth. The sages about 2,000 to 5,000 years ago that created the principles of Chinese medicine, they observed nature and they correlated the observation and the principles of nature to the body. They believed that our physical structure is just an extension, an expression of nature itself, and we're part of it. So when in a process of healing our body, we're actually bringing our frequency back to nature, becoming one with it.
This is one place where some guys have a hard time. Men have a hard time when we're hearing about frequency, for instance, and yet everything in the body has some kind of current or frequency. You can't have nerve signaling without current or frequency. And yet, because of some of the things that we're taught with Western medicine, we completely pull away from that talk of frequency, energy, cohesiveness, grounding, and instead reach for the magic pill. We're supposed to get a pill or a potion that's supposed to fix everything. I was taught that as a kid. You go to the doctor, you have an ache or pain, you get a pill, and it makes it better. And it's not a very complete solution. Often it's just a little patch, a little Band-Aid, but it doesn't really get to the heart of the solution. So how do you get to the heart of it? I know you're doing acupuncture, which is full body. When somebody comes in to see you, what's the process? How do you start?
Working with integrative Chinese medicine, we look at the body from one, giving a diagnosis, Chinese diagnosis, like we talked about, where the disharmony of qi, blood, yin and yang is, and really creating a diagnosis there. Then we also do laboratory testing depending on what the chief complaint is, what the constitution is, and we order tests to see what the results are. Based on that, we create a functional medicine diagnosis and we combine the two together. We also do further investigation to understand what's happening on a mental and emotional level with the patient. What aspects of the mind and the emotions that have led to the certain behaviors and lifestyles. Like what if like someone's living a completely unhealthy lifestyle that has now contributed to the disease, right? Usually there's an emotional, mental component behind that. Patching up something that somebody's not looking at. Sometimes someone is really unhappy or they're not dealing with their emotions, so they're eating foods that are unhealthy for them, that's dampening them down instead of dealing with their emotions. That would be one example of it, right? So through intuitive coaching, we're looking at, okay, what's happening on a mental, emotional level and an energetic body level. Where in the energy systems are those mental, emotional aspects, the aspects of the consciousness compromised and blocked? And how can we open those systems to support now what we're going to do on a physical level? So from this perspective, we want to think of as disease and disharmony, not just on a physical level, but on an emotional, mental, spiritual level. And we want to meet all aspects of a person to get to the root cause. Because if we heal it on a physical level, but there's still components of it on a spiritual level, mental, emotional level, either it won't fully heal on a physical level or it will manifest on a different level, different disease patterning as we start to heal it, because the root of it hasn't been addressed.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the reasons that we were drawn to your website. When I started looking at material before we reached out, seeing that you were looking at the physical side, blood work, things like that, and the emotional, and even the spiritual, really looking at the whole person, because so much of what we have in the way of illness or pain or even suffering is more than just, it's driven by more than just one aspect of our person. So I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it as always, are we living to our full potential? Are we satisfied? Are we happy? Are we feeling we are in meaning in our life? Are we needed? Are we achieving that? Then you're fully awake and engaged in your life, right? And in that process, if you are, then you make very different choices that contribute to your health patterning.
The integrative Chinese medicine for women, what in particular does it help with women? Because I know with women, there are some challenges that are a little harder than others, even fibromyalgia, for instance, which hits women more often than men. What are some of the other things that you can help address? And why is it different for women versus men?
Well, for women's health, we can treat anywhere from PMS to infertility issues to pre and postmenopausal issues like that, or endometriosis, PCOS. And for men, generally patients that I've seen in relation to reproduction, it's usually they've had motility issues and infertility issues like that, or maybe a loss of testosterone at a young age, right, where they don't have their vitality. Those are the ways it differs for men and women. And the way we address it is very similar to the principles of Chinese medicine. We're always looking at blood flow and energy flow within the reproductive organs, within the lower part of the lower jiao. So the kidney energy, the ovaries, the blood flow in the uterus, right? Is there stagnation? Is there deficiency? There's always a connection to digestion. So we're always looking at the health of the spleen and the stomach and the liver energy. So looking at those particular organs, if there's any kind of deficiency or excess, what we need to address to bring it back into balance. That would be for women's health. And then the other aspect of it we would look at is where is it that perhaps a woman is not fully empowered or satisfied in her life or truly listening to her own inner intuition and her own voice that might be causing constriction in her nervous system, which would lead to liver qi stagnation. Liver qi stagnation is often a huge reason for any kind of PMS symptoms or even PCOS, right? One of the leading causes of infertility worldwide. Liver qi stagnation is a huge part of it. Obviously, diet is a huge part of it as well, right? Because as our diet has become more oriented towards foods that come from factory instead of coming from the earth, our foods are causing systemic inflammation, and that chronic systemic inflammation prevents our body from detoxifying our hormones properly. And then that excess of hormone that comes right before the cycle always causes a lot of PMS issues or other issues like PCOS and disharmonies in the estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, like that.
The balance. think
A
it's a
lot
lot
of
harder for
things to
women.
balance.
We don't get the one hormone, women get more than one. Seems like it's a lot more challenging. Keep everything working in imbalance.
It's challenging and yet very simple. If we stick to the most basic rules of eating as healthy as possible, close to the earth as possible, getting enough sleep, hydrating ourselves, exercising, which is the number one way to reduce inflammation, spending time in nature, meditating, right? Really living a more holistic life, listening to our inner voice, our own inner wisdom, trusting ourselves. If we just do those basics, most people will live a healthy life, right? 80% of people, we will start seeing symptoms eventually come into balance. And then you would come to an acupuncturist for maintenance versus severe disharmony. So a lot of the work that we do as practitioners is actually coaching patients to how to go about living a balanced life again, how giving them ideas of bringing in the right foods and managing stress and mindset and how to approach their perception and paradigm shifts that allows them to be open to life again, allows their nervous system to be relaxed again, and for them to connect again.
Okay, with Herbal Mana, we work with folks with pain, chronic pain, inflammation being the root of many of the problems.
Yes.
How do you help somebody with chronic inflammation? What are the things you tell them to stop doing? What are a few of the things you tell them to start doing?
Well, with chronic inflammation, the first thing we want to do is we want to do gut testing to look at the microbiome to see if there's leaky gut. And then we also want to test for food intolerances and nutritional imbalances to see where the level of depletion is. That would be to address it right away. But in the meanwhile, while we're waiting for test results to kind of create a tailored protocol for a person to reduce inflammation, the basic things to get off of would be gluten and dairy, breads, or things that are hard to digest. Really paying attention to, after eating, what foods are making them feel tired after and what foods are actually contributing to energy. Making sure that they're eating to 90% fullness and not overly eating. And then making sure that they're chewing their food well, so that the digestive enzymes in the mouth, which are different than the digestive enzymes in the stomach, are able to do their job to support the process of breaking down the food so you can actually absorb the nutrition. If you just do those simple things and exercise and sleep properly and manage your stress, then that will completely take care of chronic inflammation issues. There is a small percentage of inflammation that does come from underlying dormant infections, but that would be a smaller percentage where we would have to do deeper dive into different lab testings to look deeper into what the cause of it is.
With inflammation, starting on the inside with gut health, what are you looking for? And what is typically deficient for somebody that is running chronic inflammation? What's a common problem when we're looking at just microbiome health? What is it about our diet or our life that sets it off?
Yeah, we're looking at the balance of good bacteria to bad bacteria, right? So what we would call dysbiosis, we want to make sure that there's a good amount of good bacteria because it's the good bacteria that's going to eat the food, break it down, and feed it to the body for nutrition, right? So we want to make sure there's good bacteria in there. We want to make sure that there's proper lining and there's not an increased intestinal permeability so they don't have a leaky gut. If there's a leaky gut, then there would be endotoxins entering the bloodstream, which then would cause systemic inflammation. The immune system would get activated. And also, we want to make sure there's no overgrowth of candidus or there's no kind of parasites or mold overgrowth like that at the level of the gut. So we want to test and see what is going on in there. Is there SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, or FIBO, fungal bacterial overgrowth? We have to address those things first and then re-heal the gut, make sure that we have brought the junctions of the gut and made them smaller so no endotoxins are entering the bloodstream and causing inflammation like that. So those are things we're looking for generally.
When I've had inflammation issues in the past, which I've had a lot of injuries, surgeries, I've had 20 orthopedic surgeries. Talking to my MD practitioners, if I have inflammation, which I do frequently, the solution is take an anti-inflammatory, take an over-the-counter Aleve or ibuprofen, which exacerbates the problem. never, from my MD side of the world, did we ever address gut health. And I didn't really understand how big a deal it was until we switched. We got a naturopath, and she ran us through labs just like you do, the analysis just like you do, to start figuring out from the inside out what was working and what wasn't working. And it's a lot more effective than just popping more ibuprofen, which was really making matters far, far worse. So it's good to see that. And it's unfortunate that most Western medicine just ignores that part of the body. And we try to put a patch on the inflammation without addressing the cause of the inflammation. So I think that's wonderful. How about food intolerances? How do you test for food intolerances?
It's usually done through a serum blood test.
Sounds pretty easy. I also
It
did
is
not know
easy.
that was the thing.
The difficult part about it is about a month before doing the test, you have to just eat everything, right? So even if foods that you know that might cause inflammation, but you just want to verify, you want to eat everything. So someone will become really systemic or symptomatic before they take the test. So that's the difficult part of eating everything so that we can actually test for it and then see what's showing up at the level of the blood. When we approach it, we want to think of foods because there will be one list of foods that are completely dangerous and you should not eat them at all. And then there's a middle area where there's a moderate level of you could eat a little bit of it. But when we're in the process of healing the gut, we don't allow a patient to eat foods in moderate or in danger zone. Let them eat foods that are in a green zone. And then what we find is once we actually heal the gut and there's not intestinal permeability anymore, we wait about a month after we've healed the gut and we introduce the foods back in. And most of the time, most of the foods that they've been intolerant to, they actually go away. And they become intolerant to them only because there was intestinal permeability.
Froze. Hold on a second. It's catching out. All right. Looks like you're back now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So somebody gets the testing. It's a blood test. That sounds easy enough. And then they get guidance for the foods to eat, not to eat. Okay. I think I could do that. But again, I didn't know that was a thing until my naturopath started working with me, and maybe half a dozen years ago. Before that, I would read books about elimination diets, and I would try that. Man, that's complicated. Doing an elimination diet, then putting a food back, taking it out, putting a different food in, taking it out. I spent weeks and weeks and made a little progress until I got to the right practitioner. And she was able to give me amazing insights just with blood tests, some other testing, some other labs. And within 2 or 3 weeks, we had a plan, which to me was so important because I'll do what I'm told. I just didn't know what to do. I had no idea because I was trying to do it on my own without any real structure. I like to see the structure. And I also like in your material and what I see online, talk a lot about the mindset of healing. It's not just about popping a pill, drinking a potion. It's a little bit more involved, which I really appreciate. I really like that.
Yeah, one of the things I tell patients is my job is to focus on the disease patterning. Your job is to focus on being healthy and healing. So instead of worrying about the disease patterning, a patient should only focus on the mindset of their everyday waking up, focusing on feeling good, focusing on that they're healthy already, focusing on their goal and their end result. My job is to pay attention to the details of what percentage is better, what percentage we need to tweak, all those things. That's why you work with the practitioner so that you maintain the mindset of I am already healthy, maintain your vibration, your mind in that direction, and your practitioner can take over all the other detailed minutes as an investigator to keep supporting and tweaking everything in the right direction.
Okay. All right. So I get the testing, work on the issues from the inside out, and then you mentioned something that is usually overlooked for managing inflammation, and that is exercise and movement.
Yes.
Why is that so impactful for inflammation? Not very many practitioners talk about this, by the way, and I know that it's helpful just from my own experience. How does it help with inflammation?
Exercise is the number one way to reduce inflammation from your system. It's the number one way. So it helps with detoxification. It improves blood flow. It improves dopamine and serotonin production, and it improves mood, right? It even works with longevity. And it's actually the number one way to maintain for longevity health as well. It's the most important thing to do. Our bodies are meant to move. Our bodies are not meant to be sedentary the way we are in our lifestyle. We are meant to connect and be outdoors and move our bodies and connect to the universe and the environment and nature. That connection, that movement, that circulation of life force is life nourishing itself. When things are sedentary and blood is not flowing, right? Just think of like a river that's moving versus a water that's still, right? What happens when a water is still for too long and all the different things that grow in it, right? Versus a river that's flowing and moving and how healthy that water is. Well, we're mostly water and our blood flow, right? So that's very similar. You want to keep a healthy body, keep it moving.
And as far as general guidelines, what kind of movement, what should I be doing? Do I need to go run a couple miles every morning? Do I need to go lift weights?
It depends on where you're starting. So if you have something like HPA axis, dysregulation, what we used to call adrenal fatigue, then you don't want to exercise too much. You want to go for 10,000 steps of every day, right? And you want to pay attention to how you're feeling, because you don't want the exercise to actually deplete you, because you're in a process of rebuilding your energy system, rebuilding your vitality. But if you're starting from somewhere where you need to lose weight and you have a metabolic disorder, then you want to start with building muscle slowly, safely, so you don't injure yourself. And you want to little by little build that exercise routine. So I would say start with 10 to 15 minutes of weightlifting or something like Pilates or a combination of both, and yoga, right? So you're moving your body in all different directions and you are building your muscles, the outer muscles and the core inner muscles, like that. And then as you find that once you've created a small routine and your body's reacting well to it, you haven't injured yourself in any way, then you want to expand the time that you are exercising. I recommend, if you have the capacity, to at least exercise 5 days a week. If you can't, 3 days a week. If you can, 7 days a week. But it doesn't have to be in the same level of intensity, right? So like maybe 3-4 days of the week, it's intense exercising. And then 3 days of the week, it's more yoga and stretching and rejuvenation.
Sounds like 5 to 7 days per week I have to actually move.
Yes.
I do go to the gym at least 5 days a week, first thing in the morning. Besides moving, I find that it helps my mental health tremendously. If I don't get to the gym, my mental health suffers, my energy, my focus, my mood. If I miss the gym a couple days in a row, it has quite an impact on me. So it's not just about inflammation, it's just overall mental health for me. If I don't have that time, and I don't go to socialize, I just go to move. In fact, I don't meet people at the gym. My wife is astounded. I actually met 2 people at the gym this calendar year. That's unusual, because that's normally my entire annual supply of new acquaintances at the gym is around 2, because I'm just there to move, not to visit, but it helps tremendously. And I also find that if I don't, I lose range of motion. I've had knee replacements, shoulder surgery, back surgery. And if I'm not doing resistance training that emphasizes range of motion, I start pretty quickly to lose my range of motion. I don't think I'm quite like most folks. I've had more trauma than most folks. And I just had my 60th birthday, so I'm older than a lot of folks.
Happy birthday.
So I've got to do a lot to maintenance. I've got to do a lot to maintain. Take some time. Now, I'm all the way up in Boise, Idaho. You're San Diego. That's got to be, well, I know it's a 16-hour drive because I made that drive. How do I work with you from Boise, Idaho? How does somebody do that from a distance? What does that look like?
I do most of my work virtually. So I'll do Zoom calls or phone calls depending on patient's preference. And usually we start with just a chief complaint intake, looking at patient history. And then based on patient history, we do lab testing. And then once the results come in, we create a Chinese diagnosis based on patient history, and we look at the tongue. And then we combine Chinese medicine and functional medicine. And then there'll be different questions that we also ask for the more intuitive coaching and energy work that we also do distally.
When you do the testing
Mhm.
and you come up with supplements, I noticed on your website that you can have some of that fulfilled through full script,
Yes.
which is not as widely used as it really ought to be. If you're using full script for one of your patients, what do they see?
What do you
When I
mean?
go into full script, if I'm a practitioner, I go in and I see a protocol all mapped out for me, telling me what to do, not just a recommendation, go on full script, see if you can find some magnesium. I can see everything mapped out. So I know exactly what to do, which for me is a big relief because I'm only slightly knowledgeable in what you do. So I really need to lean on my healthcare practitioners to really know what to do.
Yeah,
And
so
so I was pretty excited as part of your
it would be
process.
very tailored, specific supplementation regimen for a time or period that would be necessary for whatever the results were and what the deficiencies were based on lab work, and also the Chinese herbs. That would not come from full scripts. It would be sent to their home. So it wouldn't just be like everything on full scripts. It would be a tailored protocol for the patient that when they enter and create their own account.
I also love that part about the tailored approach, a plan that fits each person rather than a generic packet of vitamins from Kirkland that you can buy at Costco, which may or may
Which
not
would not
be.
be even good quality supplements.
That is true. In fact, that's kind of funny. My son-in-law, this was a few years back, he decided to start trying to get healthy. One of the first things he did is he went to Costco and he bought the big box of the multi-pack Kirkland vitamins. And he called up the next morning just laughing because he said, I've got cartoon pee. His urine was just bright yellow. And I said, well, that's awesome. And it's funny, but that just means you bought a bunch of stuff that's passing right through you and not doing you any good.
And perhaps sometimes causing harm.
A lot of the yeah. And I've looked at a lot of the vitamins. You can buy calcium, comes essentially from rocks. You can buy a lot of knockoff synthetics that don't get absorbed or do harm. So it's good to have a good source, somebody you can rely on.
Absolutely.
For the Chinese herbs, how do you fulfill that? That seems like a little harder thing because you don't have a full script kind of platform. So how do you fulfill that for somebody?
There's different
like me, all the
herbal
way up
companies, Chinese herbal companies that you work with, and then you just write a formula that's in specific for a patient, and then they fill it and mail it to the patient's home. And we only work with legendary herbs that are triple tested for any heavy metals, and they're completely safe to use.
Perfect. Okay. I like that. All right. Now, I want to shift a little bit away from the lab testing and such to energy. I know you do a lot with energy.
Yes.
What does that mean to somebody that's new?
Well, like energy work is always tailored for the specific client that's coming in and what their needs are. We're always looking at their energy system in relation to what they are experiencing. So let's say somebody comes in with anxiety and they feel like they're way too sensitive and they have extreme social anxiety. So then we would look at their energy system to see where there's a disharmony at the level of like their chakra energy system and even their meridian systems like that and their auric field and their boundaries, their energetic boundaries, and where is it that their nervous system is absorbing too much information and not letting go of that information. So we're looking at the body more as energy than the physical dense aspect of the body. And I find that that's much more powerful for mental, emotional, spiritual aspects of a disease patterning.
How do you help somebody that's a little too sensitive? They're maybe a little too empathic and don't know quite how to deal with that. My wife is quite empathic. Our middle child, who is the partner in Herbal Mana, quite empathic. How do you help somebody protect themselves when they are empathic?
Well, when somebody is an empath, I find that by the time I see them, because they're born as an empath, right? So they have very little disconnection to an authentic presence. So they don't actually know what they feel like because from day one, they've been absorbing the world around them. So the first place to start with is teaching them how to release everything and anything that's not theirs on an emotional, spiritual, mental level, or even lodged in physiologically on an energetic level, releasing and clearing that out of their system. And we help them do that through meditation and really teaching them to feel the difference of what it feels like once that's cleared and bringing healing energy in, right, through meditation. And then reintroduce them to what it feels like not to be bombarded with other people's information, with other people's emotions. Once they have that palette, their own palette of what they should feel like, what their energy feels like, who they are, then they have an understanding of where they start and someone else starts. Then it's a lot easier for them to now detect when the moment something starts to come in, when they start feeling differently. So the first step is to reconnect themselves to themselves. And then the rest is really developing their intuition. And so all that sensitivity is really their gifts. So developing an intuition for an empath usually comes very easily because they're already very tuned in. We just have to turn that tuned in to work for their favor versus work against them. And in the process of creating those stronger boundaries, they're actually developing their gifts and coming into their power. And then in that process, they actually become influencers. They can actually influence the environment around them with positivity versus being a garbage disposal of the world and processing everybody's stuff.
Got a distance question again. I'm in Boise, Idaho. You're in San Diego. How does this process look with that distance? I'm not sitting with you. How do you coach me through this process of learning how to separate me from everybody else as far as emotions and the intrusions? How do we do that at a distance?
It's very similar to, like, let's say if you're listening to guided meditation through YouTube, right? And you're like listening to someone guide you through meditation, and then you're having these experiences. It's the same thing, right? So when we're working distally, then I'm guiding you through for you to connect to your own system. And I actually find working virtually with someone and not being in person is much more powerful than being in person. And the reason for that is, for some reason, when you are in a room with someone, you associate all of your experiences with that person is doing it for me, versus really being empowered of like, no, this is actually me. I'm actually doing this for myself. When you're working virtually with someone, and because you're not in the space with them and you're just guiding them and they're actually tapping into these places, I find that they come into their power much more quicker and really take ownership of like, oh no, I can do this. And I can be responsible for my own energy system. And I'm much more gifted than I ever thought I was.
I worked with somebody about a year ago. She's actually a family friend. And she was working with me on exactly this issue. And she was explaining to me that, well, she gave me a choice. We could do this in person, or we could do it remotely. But if we do it in person, it's not as likely to work as quickly. Just because everything, like you were saying, becomes interconnected. A little hard to peel me away from her as she's guiding me through this. So we did this remotely. She's 3 miles from me.
Mm-hmm.
And it still worked out wonderfully. And being away, being separate from her required me to actually focus more on me, my thoughts, my feelings, my boundaries without getting kind of jumbled up in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a little bit odd. And then, by golly, it worked wonderfully.
Yes.
And rapid. I also feared I would be in for multiple sessions. We had a few sessions. Then she recorded something for me to help me with guided meditation. And it was astounding, remarkable how quickly it helped.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to know the right people.
Yes, it does.
Something on your website caught my attention. A dowser. What is that in your area? I know what a dowser is because I grew up on a ranch. I know what it is too. Well, what a dowser does. In the Old West movies, carrying a forked branch to find water, which is kind of cute on film, actually works in the right hands. My dad grew up on a farm ranch in rural eastern Idaho. And when they needed water, they would call on somebody in particular to find it. 100% absolutely flawless, whatever he was involved. He had whatever gift, whatever intuitive gift to be able to do that. But I assume you are not looking for water. What is it you're doing?
We use a pendulum to amplify the energy. And we also use a pendulum to get detailed answers of like percentages. So like, let's say we do a clearing on an energy system and we will go back after we do a clearing and see, okay, what percentage of it was cleared? What percentage is left? What percentage is connected to a lesson that the person still needs to learn and integrate like that? So we get detailed answers like that working with a pendulum and amplify the energy work like that.
At a distance as well as in person? Or is that an in-person?
I usually will do it virtually. And also it's when I'm working with clients to develop their intuition, it's one of the first tools I give them because I find that it's easier for someone to tap into that inner wisdom using a pendulum, getting answers as yeses and nos before they start hearing and feeling it. But what I always tell them is that just remember the pendulum is just a tool for you to tap into your own inner power and you don't want to become dependent on it. It's just a tool for you to access yourself. All of it is within you.
Yeah, and I love that. All material and what I've seen online, a lot of delivery of tools and mindset, helping me to be responsible for some of the choices I'm making rather than just leaning on a practitioner to fix things. And that's been kind of fascinating. As I was going through YouTube videos, the meditations and such, I was pretty impressed. I did not expect that it would be affecting me. And it did. That was pretty awesome to see that even without any background, without any context, it could still be effective. That was pretty cool. What about Theta? I think there was mention of Theta on the website. What is that?
Theta healing is, it works with energy a little bit differently. So it works more with the upper energy centers or going straight to the heart energy. And to get into our inner wisdom, our intuition, our psychic powers, to be able to get information for someone else. So in Theta healing, often you will either go all the way up to the upper energy centers and connect to the aspect of yourself that's one with the source of all love and all light, or you'll go through your energy, through your heart energy center. And then from there, you go and start doing a scan of somebody's energy system to see where the blockages or disharmonies are in relation to whatever it is that they're coming to you for and whatever it is that they're looking healing for. And then healing is done through the upper energy centers or through the heart center like that. And then the other aspect of Theta healing is also that you're working a lot with mindset and belief systems that have been maintaining certain blockages or disharmonies in the energy centers. Those are the two areas that you work with. So it's a lot of psychic work and a lot of healing and getting information.
When did you realize that you were sensitive enough to do this kind of work? Because I don't think everybody can do this. Well, in fact, I know. Not everybody can do this. Not everybody's as in tune as needed. When did you know that you could do this for people? You could provide this level of care and attention?
I started coming into intuitive work for the purposes of healing myself. I was incredibly sensitive and empathic, but there wasn't anyone around me that could explain to me what I was experiencing. And it wasn't until I actually found intuitive practitioners that told me what I was and what I was experiencing that a light bulb just went on of like, and this is what I'm experiencing. And once I was given the tools that then now I could be somewhat of a normal person, meaning like at least I could have better boundaries and not experience everything, but I still experienced reality very different than most people. That's when the interest in learning as many healing modalities and many different lenses of looking at energy work and healing and all the different tools that I could bring in, because I find that different energy work works better with different people. Somebody's going to need more Theta healing. Someone's going to do better with Reiki. Another person's going to do much better with developing their own intuition, right? And getting in touch with their own powers. So as many tools that you can have to see what is it that the person in front of you needs is always helpful. And it's fun. It's fun learning different modalities.
At what point did you decide to learn acupuncture? And how did you go about learning acupuncture? How does somebody do that?
You go to Chinese medical school. It's a 5-year program, of a master's program and a doctoral program. I studied energy medicine for a long time, and for some reason I needed licensing to feel more legit. And I needed more something that was more tangible and grounded than all the energy work that I had been studying. So acupuncture was just an extension of all the healing work that I had been studying. And that also now brought it more to the more dense and physical aspect of the body. So then I just took some opening series classes at Empress College in Los Angeles. And then I continued to go because it was very fun and interesting. And I found it exciting. And a year later, I was still very interested. The topic hadn't become dull in any way. And that's when I decided that I was going to finish the course and pursue becoming a doctor of Chinese medicine.
You said 5 years?
Correct.
It's a long program. Then you also mentioned licensing. How does that work? Licensing side of acupuncture.
You take a board examination, California board examination, or a national examination. Different states will have different tests that you take, or there's also a national one that is accepted by some states, so you can go to different states and practice. But some states don't allow it. So like California, you have to have a California license to practice in California. A lot of the schooling that you go through actually prepares you for the test.
Did that schooling give you the background you needed for the functional nutrition that you do? Is that part of that process, or is that going to be separate somehow? Because I know that's a huge body of knowledge by itself.
Yeah, the functional nutrition, Chinese nutrition is very different than functional nutrition. And it has a very different theory. And I lean more towards functional nutrition that's more connected to functional medicine and laboratory testing versus Chinese nutrition. And I find works better with more modern diseases like the level of autoimmunity that we're experiencing, especially in younger adults. But you definitely do get training in nutrition, but more from like the temperature of different foods and mixing in with Chinese herbs and cooking with them. So it's a little bit different. So definitely a lot more education that comes after school. And you continue to learn. That's what's really beautiful about medicine. You're never at a place where you're like, I know everything. There's always more information to learn. And it's a growing field. That's what's called a practice. It's never ending. If you ever feel like you know everything, then you know you're no longer a good practitioner.
Definitely always changing.
Yes.
No doubt about that.
Yes, just like we are.
Interesting to see, not to be political, but we've got Robert Kennedy who's trying to shake up American nutrition, which is going to be really interesting to watch because American food system is not that wonderful. It's going to be kind of interesting to see if he can make some headway, regardless of politics and such, and whatever else is going on with that administration. He's the most interesting character that I'm following. I hope he can at least get more transparency, better labeling, get out some of the things we know are truly awful out of the food supply. I just hope he's able to get that done because things are a mess right now. I have a hard time because I've seen a heck of a time just getting real food, whole foods to eat. Most of what's sold at the grocery store, I can't partake. I get to shop around the outside, fruits, vegetables, dairy, some of the dairy, I can't do much of it, and then meat. But I can't go in the middle of the grocery store, processed foods and such. Just doesn't work. And I'm finding that's starting to be the case for a lot of folks, not even just the folks that can't handle gluten. A lot of folks have all kinds of digestive issues. I think a lot of it comes out of the stuff that's in the food, the ultra-processed foods. It takes such a toll. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to watch, see where that goes.
Yeah, he's got to battle against big corporations with a lot of money. So it's hopefully it will be a good one that will help humanity and life.
I want it to just be a little bit simpler. What is your morning routine as a healthcare practitioner? What is your typical morning routine?
My morning routine starts with breakfast will be like hard-boiled eggs and almonds, sometimes almonds, apple, and then meditation, exercise, and then start with work.
So you're really doing what you're preaching.
Yes, yeah. It makes my life a happy place when I maintain my schedule.
I've got to have the same thing. I have a very structured morning schedule. I have a lot of folks that need me, but I block out every morning till 9 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody can get a hold of me. I'm up by 5:30 or 6. I've got stuff I need to do.
That's right.
The meditation, the journaling, the gym time. I know if I don't do it in the morning, it's probably not going to happen.
No, it won't.
I have that kind of thing. So how do folks find you? Is it just through your website? Or are there other ways to connect to you?
They can email me, go through my website. They can, the phone number, the clinic phone number, they can always call me or text me. Those are all ways to get a hold of me.
And we'll have that down in the show notes. Website is really easy to navigate. Part is pretty simple. You've got a lot of YouTube content, which I love. A bunch going on Instagram, which I like. Good material. Easy to access. Very useful, which I really like as well. We'll include all of that in the show notes. Any other pearls of wisdom you want to share before we wrap this up?
Just to remember that your health is the most important aspect of your life. And without your health, there is no other part of your life that's going to work for you. And I think it's the one that's always taken for granted until it's not there. So working preventatively is, and maintaining health and longevity is, if you can create that discipline for yourself, it will be the greatest gift you ever give yourself.
I like that. Hey,
Such a pleasure connecting with you today.
and a lot of fun. If you like this, look down in the show notes. I'll show you a way to connect with Marya. She does have awesome stuff, good material.